Hello. I've come out of the autumnal woods for a moment and back to the Platz der Demokratie, and in particular the courtyard that was formerly the Fürstenplatz, surrounded by various stately homes. At the centre, there's a statue of Karl August, Duke of Saxe-Weimar and Eisenach, on his hunting horse. He's here because when the main castle just over there was destroyed by fire in 1774, he took up residence in the building behind me, the Fürstenhaus, which is now home to the Franz Liszt Music Conservatoire. As I said previously, Weimar's reputation as a central location for music culture was supported by devoted patronage, particularly that of Grand Duchess Maria Pavlovna, who brought Hummel and Liszt here. And I've come to the Fürstenhaus because it seems the best place to consider another 19th century figure to be attracted to the town by the ducal court, Richard Strauss, who was director of the Weimar Court Orchestra from 1890 until 1894. And it just so happens that one of the most important pieces Strauss worked on when he was living here was based on the work of Friedrich Nietzsche, thus Spake Zarathustra. Strauss had already written several tone poems in the Liszt tradition when he began composition of a piece based around the literary work in 1894, only 3 years before Nietzsche moved to Weimar himself. Strauss had been particularly moved by Nietzsche's polemics against the established conventions of religion, and in particular what he interpreted as the anti-ethical Augustinian argument that supposedly released believers of responsibility for their actions. Strauss had been enamoured by the many implied criticisms of Christianity to be found in Zarathustra, and especially the critique of doctrine that encouraged the life-denying belittlement of earthly experience and, as an alternative, the quest for utopian afterlife. It was ideal material for lifting the expressive possibility of music to new heights, and for using programmatic elements not just as anecdotal metaphor, as in the Liszt, but as a structural force underpinning the music. If the sounds of nature, the personalities of individuals, and the very essence of liberation and freedom could be portrayed in terms of musical structure, as they were in the musical dramas of Richard Wagner, then the full drama of the opera house could be carried into the concert hall. At first there is a deep pedal bass, then the trumpets, a great declamatory nature fanfare, which is a boundless infinity of nature in and of itself, not that is perceived by humans, not the phenomenal world, but a glimpse of the impossible. This is Kant's unknowable noumenal world made as music. This is the necessity in which all contingent worlds transpire, including the one particular possible world of which Strauss then tells a story. Once upon a time, said the cellos and basses, joined by the wind and an organ, there was a simple folk who lived a simple life in the simple countryside. Their days were very simple indeed, but also very beautiful, for theirs was an Arcadian idyll of delight and magnificent loveliness. However, there came a time when one among them felt a stirring for something other. The naivety of simplicity created doubt in the mind, and there were the stirrings of a great calling in the oboes and cor anglais. But without guidance, it was a pathway that led astray, enhanced by new and fantastic experience. Unimaginable previously, there were joys and passions, but there were also squalls of obsessive turmoil, and then monstrous hurricanes of Wagnerian decadence and depravity and wickedness, and all things terribly nasty. until, confronted with the greatest unpleasantness of all, the mask of mortality, and the song of the grave, there is a quest for new direction. There is contemplation and reflection. There is resolution to learn and to think, to reason and to search for wisdom, to set aside the wild abandon of unresolved cadences for the scholarly examination of formal fugue. The one among these folk studies Liszt's Faust, as Faust once studied those same formal fugues, until at last there is knowledge and understanding, until at last the convalesced scholar comes down from the mountain full of confidence at the triumph of accomplishment. And now there is energy and confidence in the stride and the brandishing of more thematic layers per fugato than any musical offering, and more suspensions per cadence than any Schenkerian analysis. This is the ascension of the superior one, both triumphant and modest, both transcendent and immanent. This is the essence of nature made human, the noumenal made itself. This is a will to sing songs of celebration and dance to rhythms of joyfulness, and in particular the rhythms of Bayerisch Lieder und Wiener Walzer, gekleidet in Lederhosen und Oktoberfest Blau. From the naive to the superiority of perfect earthly existence, whereby there shall be beer tents and umpa-umpa bands, and prominent violins too. And when it ends with the midnight bell tolling of soft nocturnal serenity, then there is peace and tranquillity. At least there would be if it weren't for those last few strange notes, the low E and C and F sharp in the bassoon.
Strauss said in his later years that he'd not intended to convey any particular philosophical ideas from the Nietzsche, but just retell the story of Zarathustra going up the mountain, transforming into the superior human, kapow, and then coming back down again. It was Nietzsche's literary prowess he'd admired. There was supposed to be nothing more to it than that. It was a piece of music after all, and you can't do abstract cognitive ideas in music. The most you can achieve is the stereotypical analogies of metaphor.
It's ironic that, in wanting to tell a mere fairy tale, Strauss should have chosen such a powerful literary narrative as context. Nevertheless, I might accept Strauss's apologies, overwhelmed as he must have been by the later furore over Nietzsche's work, if it weren't for the last page of the score, those last notes in the bassoons and the double basses repeating the nature motif from the great heraldic fanfare at the beginning of all things. I would accept Strauss's claim to impartiality, especially given the limits to metaphor and analogy I discussed in the list, even in cases where the music is structured explicitly by the narrative of the metaphysical illusion, if it weren't for that last page. I have no doubt Strauss is making verbatim allusion to Nietzsche's notion of eternal recurrence, the mastery possessed by the superior human over contingency itself. Faced with the knowledge that he must be prepared to repeat every action that he's ever taken, in his mind if not literally, The superior human is elated as he has no regrets and loves life. Opting to change any decision or event in his life would indicate the presence of resentment or fear. It would lead to despair and self-annihilation. But that is not the way of the One. Nietzsche has done something remarkable here. This is not an allusion to a character behaving in a particular way, the foolish or the funny, an imitation of personality traits. Conversely, this is a pointer to the very substance of modality, which is a metaphysical construct. It deals with the nature of existence, in particular the possible and necessary attributes of existence. For the first time in musical history, music has crossed the ontological barrier that previously separated it from existence itself.
I don't believe this was done unconsciously. One of the major compositional themes of the piece is the contrast between the keys of B major, representing humanity and contingency in an abstract sense, and C major, representing the universe and the modality of necessity.
The music depicts the two in antagonism, but they're never really separate entities. Mind and nature are unified into a single argument throughout. However, that last page doesn't speak of resolution and reconciliation. It restates alienation and suggests a need to repeat the entire process of unification over again.
No, I can't accept this was a carefree, meaningless gesture on Strauss's behalf, scribbled carelessly in the carriage to Munich, not from somebody who was soon to write his own Iphigenia opera, the massive Electra. But whatever Strauss's impulses, still the question remains about whether this is a statement of self-enhancement and victory, the voice of the self-mastered individual who's achieved his full power, or one of uncertainty and defeat. Is this the voice of the superior human expressing a will to power, the fundamental component of human nature that gives mastery over time, or of the life denier who remains persecuted by time? It very much sounds the latter, or perhaps not.
Richie Robertson wrote that the will to power escapes from the control of the self and becomes an impersonal, autonomous force by which the self is helplessly driven along. This implies mastery of the superior one will never be rid of the continual struggles against the surrounding context, even if those struggles are the reason for life. On the other hand, Nietzsche wrote frequently of his loathing for sentiments of human pity, compassion, indulgence and mercy towards a victim. Such things are to be regarded as life-denying weaknesses. Perhaps Strauss was sounding a genuine note of caution about Nietzsche's text. 3 notes, in fact.
When looking at Liszt's programmatic expression in the previous episode, I looked beyond music to linguistics and the use of metaphor, which I could then apply to music. To understand Strauss, I need to delve into linguistics again, and I want to do this by using something from modern speech act theory and how it distinguishes different types of proposition.
If I say, the music must be louder, my stance is a directive. I'm making an order, a command. But if I say, I promise the music will be louder next time, I'm taking a commissive stance. My position is one of avowal. I'm making a pledge. Speech act theory identifies several other postural possibilities like this, but by far the most common are assertions and declarations.
To be assertive is to make a statement of truth, such as, the music is loud. This is the stance I use when considering the difference between correspondence theory and identity theory, which I'll return to again in a later episode.
In contrast, to be declarative is to make a statement of convention. For instance, this is money, or it is declared that this type of watermarked paper with this type of patterns and colour shall, by convention, be treated as money, are declarations. Money doesn't exist in nature. It's a phenomena of human convention, alongside taxes, marriage, baptism, funerals and football games. But Nietzsche had said, even if not explicitly, there's no difference between what speech act theory characterises as assertive and declarative statements. There's no such thing as assertion. To think otherwise is to be deceived by lies. I might think that this is a leaf, rather than this is money, is an assertion, because it's a statement of natural fact. However, I'm still declaring my compliance with convention. My use of this sentence is based upon the concepts handed down to me by way of language, to which I was duly trained as a child, that this shall be considered a leaf. I see a violin and recognise it by shape and other factors as an exemplar of the concept violin. I conform to the conceptual concepts passed down to me by my heritage by way of language, and, in identifying the object by convention, declare my allegiance to the associated conceptual framework.
Nietzsche was responding to the work of Frege's generation, which I'll look at next week, who said that a statement such as "the tree has green leaves" comprises two truth statements. Firstly, that the tree exists, and secondly, that the tree that exists has green leaves.
Nietzsche is saying that not only is the concept of a leaf determined by convention, but the concept of existence is too. Nietzsche is making a statement about the very intentionality of thought. If all thoughts are about something, then the very nature of this aboutness is defined by convention. Accordingly, there is no difference between assertive and declarative speech acts. This is a drum, and the declarative speech act, "I declare my conformity to the convention that an object appearing like this shall be conceptualized and described as a drum," are the same thing. The point is, there are no pure facts, even pertaining to the natural world, to natural kinds. All facts perceived to be real are conceptual conventions. The abstract idea of a football team running around a field trying to beat the opposition is a human concept based on convention, as is the idea of an electron spinning around a nucleus in an atom. The notion of reality is not the aggregate of all facts, but a human construct, an act of declaration.
It's my opinion, then, that the last page of Strauss's The Spake Zarathustra is making reference to the notion that all language and all thought is defined by convention, including notions of existence and reflective awareness of existence. Consequently, the music is being used to break down the distinction between different levels of mind.
Strauss is not contradicting the basic premise of the Weimar identity thesis. This is an extension of it. However, he's breaking down the structure of three autonomous levels of the entity of mind, consciousness, and mental processes into a single entity.
He's thus opening up the possibility of a new approach to phenomenal expression, able to simultaneously embrace existence, reflective self-consciousness, and mental processes as a single phenomenological experience. It's my assumption that Brentano and Husserl, who I'll get to later, must have been inspired by this last page a lot.